I was going to ask Dom, since you're more on the sales side, how reasonable would be to basically dump the product just to get market share? Would it be a good strategy, or it would be better to capitalize on, okay, there is high demand, so I can overprice the product? So
No,
if you
no.
were to price
They should
AIP,
get
would you
hands.
dump,
They should
or
get
would
hands
you
on
ride?
keyboards, as many as possible. Eat the cost now, recoup the cost later. What
So are you
customers
saying
want?
that they're doing the right strategy
They are
if
doing the
they're
right
actually buying?
strategy. They
Okay.
need to have every customer have AIP, give them 6 months free, and then set the expectation. If you like it and you see value, you're going to pay.
So free now,
Because
you
people
have
will
6 months.
pay for value. That's why there's not a pricing strategy for Palantir. People will pay if value is realized. So let them get hands on keyboard, because that's the best thing you can do. Now it's not shelfware, it's being used.
Yeah. And I think that that's the thing that makes it the most uneasy about investing in this company is you have these large customer year over year growths of say 30, 40%, like we've seen in the last few quarters. And yet you're not seeing the revenue come through. Right. And that's the thing that's scary. So it's like, that's the thing where you have to trust and listen. And it's like, well, it might be reality. If this was my company, I would be doing the same exact thing. I saw what happened with Amazon when they basically were saying, hey, we're going to make things as cheap as possible. We're not going to charge you at the butt. We're literally just going to try to get more and more market share. I saw what happened with a lot of companies that have done that same sort of model and thought process around, hey, let's just get as much aerial exposure in as many industries as possible. But that's the thing that's scary to an extent. To me, I wouldn't care if the company's profitable today, tomorrow, or even in 2 years or so. Because if I believe that strategy, I care about just getting as much customers as possible. Because once you do start to charge those customers, let's just say it's a $3 million contract on average. Let's just say you get 2,000, 3,000 customers. The next thing you know, you're charging them $3 million each. That's $6 to $9 million. And if you do get those true net margins of 30, 40%, then the amount of money that this company is going to be generating is going to be in the same likes of, say, a Microsoft or Google. It's like, what are you going to do with all that capital, right? You can't just reinvest it back into the business. What are you going to be reinvesting it into? You're creating software products from scratch. And so it's in this big chicken and the egg sort of situation where it's like, get as much into as many hands as possible. But the thing that's scary is that in their investor presentations, they don't break that out. So you can't truly trust it, right? It's like you see that they have about a $2 million average per contract of the 600 or 400 or so customers that they have. And it's like, then you have or maybe it's closer to 3 million. I forget what it is.
Yeah,
2.9. Yeah. So it's like you see that, but in the reality, it's like most of the customers that are actually paying, maybe it's 5-6 million. And then you have a whole bunch of customers that are dragging that number down because they're not paying at all. And I just want to know, it's like, that's the problem is it's like, I still didn't make the slide. I keep talking about this damn slide I'm going to make, but it's like, you need the 3 cohorts and figure out who's progressing, who's exiting. Some people might get into that initial scale of like embedding themselves into the business and be like, this isn't for us. And we exit. And I'm just curious. It's like, how many people do you get in the conversion rates, right? Like, how long is it taking? What's your average contract life? You know, I feel like if you just had one slide, I think Palantir could honestly run their investor presentations with one effing slide, which is how's the entire business looking? Maybe it's 4 different like pieces of it, but it's like, here's the business as a whole. This is the government. This is the commercial. Here's the total customer count for the entirety of the business. Here's our revenue. Here's last year. Here's this year. And then you have the next cohort, which is the scale phase, which is, you know, the part where they're actually generating as much capital as possible, getting as much gross margin as possible. And then you have the middle phase where they're kind of expanding and continuing. And it's like, how many people are moving from expand to scale? And how is that looking over time? And then same thing with kind of the initial phase where they're just kind of, it's like, maybe we have 100, 250 customers in this initial scale or this initial part of the revenue cycle, which you're not generating any money. And so in that this case where you're getting the discrepancy, it's like, well, you're growing 30-40%, but it's going to take 18 to 24 months before you start generating any revenue. It's like, well, none of these guys in this lower bucket have moved to a place where they can actually start expanding and actually generating revenue for the company. And it's like, well, that makes me feel a lot better, but I don't know that because they don't share that. And it's like,
that's the risk, I guess, to investing, right?
That's the risk.
That's
it's the risk.
I mean, I think we will see in the 10K at the end of the year, at least last year's 10K, they actually broke down how much they were seeing from scale, expand, and acquire. So that will give us some insights there and how things are progressing. I think that there are a lot of comments in the chat about like they like their pricing or not like the price. Austin's just on fire tonight, man. This guy might work for him. I don't know.
No, he's good. He's good.
He said, they're able to prove the results and also do it at economies of scale and come downward on the supply chain. The difference between Palantir and other software companies, because I know someone in the comment said, hey, all software companies do a proof of concept and they land and expand and get you to buy the product. The difference is Palantir is tackling the most difficult problems, helping the customer understand what those problems are that they actually have, and then they're quantifying it. That's the big difference. That's what attracted me to Palantir from the get-go, was I had not seen a software company quantify so easily the return on investment and prove it and say, look, you're going to pay us $1 million because I saved you $3 million. There's not many companies in the world that can do that and prove that. And that is something that makes it a lot easier to keep a customer when you're doing that kind of stuff.
So do you agree that what Karp was saying, that most software companies are actually better at selling you stack dinners rather than actual results because they don't want to actually show the results?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of companies don't have the right product that can solve true business outcome results, right? They can solve a fraction of it. They can solve this feature or that feature or help you get this much better. But to truly transform how your company does business and looks at how to make decisions, only Palantir has that ontology. And that is truly what I would be selling if I was a Palantir AE out in the field. Like, it is a paradigm shift. So that's why the sales cycle is longer. You have to get the customer to think differently. But once you do, the results are just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Just to make one step back, could you show the slide again? We were saying about the Palantir presentation removing the cohort slide. And I believe when you remove some information, you hide some information, basically is because it's too good or too bad. And I think here is a kind of a mix, because on the one side, we have the impact of the SPAC's revenues that is too bad that needs to be hidden, because basically in 2021, since they start contributing, initially they had a very strong contribution. Actually, I underscored initially when we were seeing the slides with US commercial having a very, very strong growth, that was actually primarily driven by SPACs. And the big customers that were not SPACs were not actually that big, and they were not really growing that much. But now we are seeing the opposite. We know that SPACs are basically gradually dying, apart from a couple of them. The amount Palantir is receiving is lower. So there is an interesting theme happening right now, that we see the revenues that initially were inflated thanks to the SPAC contribution, because we had a period with the organic growth plus the SPACs that basically inflated the numbers. And now we have the opposite. The overall numbers that are dragged by the SPACs, that rather than contributing positively expanding, they are actually reducing the overall growth. And what's interesting is that the overall growth of the commercial revenues were like a plus 10%. But if we exclude the SPACs, it was actually 19%. And by focusing more on the US commercial, we know that the real growth from existing customers that were not SPAC was actually closer to 40%. So this to say that maybe they are removing the slides because on the one side, they are too bad in terms of what happened in 2021. Obviously, there is there. But on the other side, if we actually showed how the overall customers are expanding, we could have two precious hints on what their actually strategy is, which maybe is truly keep a very low price in the very first 1-2 years, and then lock the customer for a 5-year, like Sompo, like Westruck. So I think there is both explanation on why they're hiding. SPAC's side, too bad, but maybe there are some hints that they want to hide on the too good side, and they don't want to clearly give the opportunity to actually other guys in analytics to infer, okay, what they're actually doing with their clients.
Yeah. So that's why we do all the digging as nerdy Palantir investors on a Friday night trying to figure all this stuff out.